So 250 years ago, right now, the revolution was well underway. The American Revolution had been started. The Continental Congress was meeting in this building, Independence Hall. And one thing I've been doing every day is just checking letters that the Founding Fathers wrote back and forth to each other. So I figured I'd check today and see if I find anything interesting and share it with you. I've got my laptop right here. So I'm gonna be looking down and checking for letters. Happy July 4th to all. Let's see what the Founding Fathers were writing to each other today on this great day. July 4th, 1775. Okay, looks like there were 6 letters. John Adams to Abigail Adams, that's his wife. General orders, so that's an official document. To George Washington from George Clinton. An address to the Massachusetts Provincial Congress, another official document. To George Washington from James Warren and Joseph Hawley. And from from Thomas Jefferson to Francis Epps. Great, okay, so how about this? Let's look at the general orders and the address to the Massachusetts Provincial Congress, and then we'll dive into the letters. So first, the general orders. Let's see how long these are. Ooh, these are quite long. They're interesting, right? These are quite long. Let's get a sense of them. We might not read all of them, but let's get a sense. Because it's sort of the war report. Now we can kind of understand what's going on. General Washington is in Boston giving these orders, I believe. Parole, Abington. Exact returns to be made by the proper officers of all the provisions. Ordnance, stores, powder, lead, working tools of all kinds, tents, kettles, and all other stores under their respective care belonging to the armies of Roxbury and Cambridge, the commanding officer of each regiment, to make a return of the number of blankets wanted to complete every man with one at least. The Honorable Artemus Ward, Charles Lee, Philip Schuyler, and Israel Putnam, Esquires, are appointed Major Generals of the American Army, and due obedience is to be paid them as such. The Continental Congress, not having completed the appointments of the other officers in said army, nor had sufficient time to prepare and forward their commissions, every officer is to continue to do duty in the rank and station he at present holds until further orders. Thomas Mifflin is appointed to the General of the Aide-de-Camp. Joseph Reed, in like manner, appointed Secretary General to the General, and they are in future to be considered and regarded as such. The Continental Congress, having now taken all the troops of the several colonies which have been raised or which may be hereafter raised, are for the support and defense of the liberties of America into their pay and service. They are now the troops of the United Provinces of North America, and it is hoped that all distinctions of colonies will be laid aside, so that one and the same spirit may animate the whole, and the only contest be who shall render, on this great and trying occasion, the most essential service to the great and common cause in which we are all engaged. It is required and expected that exact discipline and due subordination prevail through the whole army, as a failure in these most essential points must necessarily produce extreme hazard, disorder, and confusion, and end in shameful disappointment and disgrace. The General most earnestly requires and expects a due observance of those articles of war established by the government of the army, which forbid profane cursing, swearing, and drunkenness, and in like manner requires and expects of all officers and soldiers not engaged on actual duty, a punctual attendance on divine service, to implore the blessings of heaven upon the means used for our safety and defense. All officers are required and expected to pay diligent attention to to keep their men neat and clean, to visit them often at their quarters, and to inculcate upon them the necessity of cleanliness as essential to their health and service. They are particularly to see that they have straw to lay on, if it to be had, and to make it known if they are destitute of this article. They are also to take care that necessaries be provided in the camps and frequently filled up, to prevent their being offensive and unhealthy. Proper notice will be taken of such officers and men as distinguish themselves by their attention to those necessary duties. The commanding officer of each regiment is to take particular care that not more than 2 men of a company be absent on furlough at the same time, unless in very extraordinary cases. Colonel Gardner is to be buried tomorrow at 3:00 p.m. with the military honors due to so brave and gallant an officer who fought, bled, and died in the cause of his country and mankind. His own regiment, except the company at Malden, to attend on this mournful occasion. The places of those companies in the lines on Prospect Hill to be supplied by Colonel Glover's regiment till the funeral is over. No person is to be allowed to go to freshwater pond of fishing or on any other occasion, as there may be danger of introducing smallpox into the army. It is strictly required and commanded that there be no firing of cannon or small arms from any of the lines or elsewhere, except in case of necessary immediate defense or special order given for that purpose. All prisoners taken, deserters coming in, persons coming out of Boston who can give any intelligence, any captures of any kind from the enemy, are to be immediately reported and brought up to headquarters in Cambridge. Captain Griffin is appointed aide-de-camp to General Lee and to be regarded as such. The guard for the security of the stores at Watertown is to be increased to 30 men immediately. A sergeant and 6 men to be set as a guard to the hospital and are to apply to Dr. Rand. Complaint having been made against John White, quartermaster of Colonel Nixon's regiment, for misdemeanors in drawing out provisions for more men than the regiment consisted of. A court-martial consisting of 1 captain and 4 subalterns is ordered to be held on said White, and who are to enquire, determine, and report. After orders, 10 o'clock. The general desires that some carpenters be immediately set to work at Brattle's stables to fix up stalls for 8 horses, and more if the room will admit, with suitable racks, mangers, etc. Although Congress appointed 8 brigadier generals on 22nd of June, George Washington decided to delay announcing those appointments when he learned shortly after his arrival in Cambridge that some of the New England officers, unhappy at not being given higher rank or precedence, might refuse their commissions. Thomas Mifflin and Joseph Reed, handsome and articulate young Philadelphians, already prominent in the business and political circles of their city and colony, became well known to George Washington during the First and Second Continental Congresses, when he dined at their homes on several occasions. Mifflin, a well-educated Quaker merchant who served in both Continental Congresses, was one of the youngest and most radical of the delegates, and quickly distinguished himself as a sprightly and spirited speaker. On the 27th of May, 1775, Mifflin was named with George Washington and several other delegates to a committee charged with finding ways to supply the colonies with ammunition and military stores. Reed, a more moderate advocate of the military cause than Mifflin, had a growing legal practice in Philadelphia and was an active land speculator. Through the family of his English-born wife, he became acquainted with Lord Dartmouth, Secretary of State for the American colonies, and from December 1773 to February 1775, he corresponded regularly with Dartmouth, explaining and defending colonial opinions and actions. Reed served with Mifflin on the Philadelphia Committee of Correspondence, and in January 1775, he was elected president of the Second Pennsylvania Provincial Congress following the battles of Lexington and Concord. Both Reed and Mifflin I'm sorry, I believe there is a parade coming, so I will finish this paragraph and then we will watch the parade go by. Following the battles of Lexington and Concord, both Reed and Mifflin joined Philadelphia's military associators, Reed as a lieutenant colonel and Mifflin as a major. Although neither man had any other military experience, George Washington chose them for his staff because he needed efficient managers in his headquarters more than he needed expert soldiers. He wished to have about him intelligent confidants to whom he could delegate a wide variety of tasks. Okay, so I think they're going to Washington Square to the tomb of the unknown soldier and the eternal flame of the unknown soldier. Yeah, the tomb of the unknown soldier, that's what it's called. And there's going to be a little military ceremony there honoring the troops. So that was nice to see. There's Independence Hall, of course. And I'm going to walk back now to where I was sitting, and we'll finish reading that little note about the general orders given by George Washington and the military command on July 4th, 1775. And we're back. Okay. Mifflin accepted a position as aide-de-camp before George Washington left Philadelphia. Reed, however, was reluctant to abandon his family and business to become George Washington's secretary, and he at first agreed only to accompany George Washington part of the way to Cambridge. It was apparently at New York that Reed finally accepted George Washington's offer. Reed explained to Elias Bidinot on 3rd of August that George Washington, quote, expressed himself to me in such terms that I thought myself bound by every tie of duty and honor to comply with his request and to help him through the sea of difficulties, end quote. Reed acted as George Washington's secretary until 30th October 1775, when he took a prolonged leave of absence to go home to Philadelphia. He returned to the Army the following June as Adjutant General with the rank of Colonel. In January 1777, Reed resigned from the Army but he served as a volunteer aide to George Washington during the ensuing campaign. Reed was a member of the Continental Congress in 1778, and from 1778 to 1781, he was president of the Pennsylvania Executive Council. Mifflin became Quartermaster General of the Continental Army on 14th of August, 1775. He was promoted to colonel on 22nd December 1775, to Brigadier General on 16th of May 1776, and to Major General on 19th of February 1777. Accused of negligence and corruption in executing his duties as Quartermaster General, Mifflin resigned from the Army in February 1779. He served again in the Continental Congress from 1782 to 1784, and while president of that body, he accepted George Washington's resignation at the end of the war. Okay, interesting. These matters are covered, footnote number 4, these matters are covered by Articles 1, 2, and 19 of the Massachusetts Articles of War, which correspond to Articles 2, 3, and 20 of Continental Articles of War. For a discussion of the Articles of War, see blah, blah, blah. Artemus Ward, George Washington's predecessor as commander of the American Army, issued general orders on the 14th of June 1775, requiring attendance at daily prayers and Sunday services, and on 30th of June he prohibited all profane cursing and swearing, all indecent language and behavior, end quote, in camp. Fifth, number 5, General Ward had earlier attempted to enforce a similar order by threatening to punish those who did not obey it. Quote, the commanding officer of each regiment, detachment, or company, quote, end quote, Ward ordered on 1st of June 1775, shall, quote, daily visit his soldiers, whether in barracks or tents, and oblige them to keep themselves clean. The officers who do not strictly adhere to this order are to be reported at headquarters, and the soldiers that disobey the officers' orders in this respect are to be confined at the main guard till they shall receive some punishment adequate to a crime so heinous. 6. John Gardner of Cambridge was mortally wounded at the Battle of Bunker Hill on 17th of June while leading reinforcements into the American lines. He died on the night of 3rd of July. 7th, a smallpox hospital had been established for the Army near Fresh Pond, which lies about 1.5 miles west of Cambridge Common. On 19th of June 1775, General Ward directed that a sentry be posted constantly at the gate of the smallpox hospital with orders to permit no person to go in or out except the doctor and such as the doctor shall permit to pass. On 2nd July, Ward ordered each company in the Army to be inspected daily for smallpox symptoms. Any man suspected of having the disease was to be removed at once. 8. Unauthorized firing of small arms remained a problem for some time. 9. More detailed instructions regarding the disposition of British deserters are given in general orders. 27th of July, 1775. 10. Samuel Griffin, formerly of Virginia and more recently a resident of Philadelphia, accompanied George Washington and Charles Lee from that city to Cambridge. He served as aide-de-camp to Lee until late the next winter, when he resigned to go into business. On 19th of July, 1776, Congress appointed him Duty Adjutant General of the Flying Camp with the rank of colonel. He returned to the Army. In December 1776, George Washington offered Griffin an opportunity to raise and command a regiment, but Griffin declined to do so and apparently moved soon afterwards to Williamsburg. He was appointed to the Virginia Board of War in June 1777 and was elected mayor of Williamsburg in December of that year. Dr. Isaac Rand of Charleston, Mass. Was commissioned by Massachusetts Provincial Congress on 28th of June 1775 to be surgeon and physician to the smallpox hospital near Cambridge, and on 7th of July he became surgeon of the hospital at Roxbury. The words for abusive behavior are added here in the read copy. In the read copy, the words "at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning" are inserted here. John White of Massachusetts continued to serve as regimental quartermaster until 30th of July 1777, when he became a brigadier quartermaster. Colonel John Nixon commanded one of the Massachusetts regiments. William Brattle, a prominent Cambridge loyalist, fled to Boston for safety in September 1774, leaving his large estate, which was located a short distance west of town, in the care of his widowed daughter. Among the horses that were to be stabled at Brattle's place were some that had been taken from the enemy this morning and given to George Washington for his use. Next, let's check out the address to the Massachusetts Provincial Council, or Provincial Congress. Yeah, that's not so long. Let's read it. Address to the Massachusetts Provincial Congress, Cambridge, circa 4th of July, 1775. Gentlemen, your kind congratulations on my appointment and arrival demand my warmest acknowledgments and will ever be retained in grateful remembrance. In exchanging the enjoyments of domestic life for the duties of my present honorable but arduous station, I only emulate the virtue and public spirit of the whole province of Massachusetts Bay, which, with a firmness and patriotism without example in modern history, has sacrificed all the comforts of social and political life in support of the rights of mankind and the welfare of our common country. My highest ambition is to be the happy instrument of vindicating those rights, and to see this devoted province again restored in peace, liberty, and safety. The short space of time which has elapsed since my arrival does not permit me to decide upon the state of the army. The course of human affairs forbids an expectation that troops formed under such circumstances should at once possess the order, regularity, and discipline of veterans. Whatever deficiencies there may be, will, I doubt not, soon be made up by the activity and zeal of the officers and the docility and obedience of the men. These qualities, united with their native bravery and spirit, will afford a happy presage of success and put a final period to those distresses which now overwhelm this once happy country. I most sincerely thank you, gentlemen, for your declarations of readiness at all times to assist me in the discharge of the duties of my station. They are so complicated and extended that I shall need the assistance of every good man and lover of this country. I therefore repose the utmost confidence in your aids to return for your affectionate wishes. Myself permit me to say that I earnestly implore that divine being in whose hands are all human events to make you and your constituents as distinguished in private and public happiness as you have been by ministerial oppression, by private and public distress. That was difficult to read. Okay. In Joseph Reed's writing, Revolutionary Letters, there is no date line on the manuscript in the Massachusetts archives, but in Sparks' writings, this address is dated 4th of July, 1775. It could not have been written earlier than 3rd of July, the date of the address from the Massachusetts Provincial Congress to which it is a reply, nor is it likely that it was written later than 5th of July because it appears in the New England Chronicle or the Essex Gazette, Cambridge, Massachusetts, of 6th of July, 1775. Footnote number 1. The word AIDS is taken from the text printed in the New England Chronicle. The manuscript in the Massachusetts archives originally read "in yours." The S in yours was subsequently struck out, and the word support, written by either Joseph Reed or Thomas Mifflin, was inserted above the line. Support, however, is also struck out, and no substitute appears in the manuscript. Number 2, the word implore, apparently written by Charles Lee, is inserted above the line in place of the original wording, hope and wish. Lee apparently inserted the word to before make, in place of the original word will. Okay, so now that we've read the official documents for today, let's read some of the letters. I think I'll skip. Let me just look at John Adams to Abigail Adams briefly, but this is usually not something I want to spend too much time on. My dear, this letter is to go to my worthy friend Stephen Collins. This gentleman, he is a native of Lynn, brother of Ezra Collins, Boston. Never agreeable instance. I beg, my dear, that he has been treated with gratitude and affection. A certain John came a Quaker of liberal sentiments. Mr. Kane is principal cause. I compose friends, Massachusetts Bay, accepting my wife, Journal Collins. From each of these, I have received 2 or 3. Okay, see, this is not what we want to focus on, so I'll leave it there. Next, let's get into the heart of these letters and read to George Washington from George Collins, or George Clinton, my apologies. To George Washington from George Clinton, 4th of July, 1775. 4th of July, 1775, recommends the bearer, quote, Mr. White and John, and the son of Anthony White, Esquire of New Jersey. Inspired with love for our much injured country, he now visits your camp to offer his service as a volunteer in the army under your command. All right, and here's a little explanation from before we... Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. That was it. And then I guess these are footnotes in explanation. Hugh Hastings and John Adams Holden, or J.A. Holden, EDS, public paper, blah, blah, blah. This letter may be incorrectly dated. George Washington, in his letter of 25th of August, writes, Mr. White presented me with your favor on the 27th ultimatum. George Clinton of Ulster County, New York, took his seat with the New York delegation in the Second Continental Congress on the 15th of May, 1775. He was in New York, however, from late June until late July, when he returned to Philadelphia. In December 1775, Clinton was appointed a brigadier general in the New York militia, and in March 1777, he became a Continental brigadier general. A lawyer whose previous military experience was limited to brief service as a subaltern during the French and Indian War, Clinton did not greatly distinguish himself as a general in the Revolution, but as governor of New York from 1777 to 1795 and 1801 to 1804, he proved to be an able politician and administrator. Footnote number 1. Anthony Walton White, son of Anthony White of New Brunswick, New Jersey, stayed at Cambridge until late October, when, failing to obtain appointment as an aide-de-camp to George Washington, he returned home to seek a place in the Continental forces being raised by New Jersey. White was appointed lieutenant lieutenant colonel of the 3rd New Jersey Battalion in February 1776, but lost that position during the ensuing year because of conduct unbecoming an officer. With George Washington's assistance, White became lieutenant colonel of the 4th Continental Light Dragoons during 1777, and in January 1780, George Washington sent him to the South to take command of the 1st Continental Light Dragoons. White was not promoted to colonel despite several appeals to Congress. He fought in the South until 1782. For George Washington's later criticism of White's military abilities, see George Washington to Timothy Pickering, 9th of September, 1798. Next, let's look at To George Washington from James Warren and Joseph Howley, 4th of July, 1775. Watertown. Sir, as Pomeroy is now absent and at the distance of 100 miles from the army, if it can be consistent with your Excellency's trust and the service to retain his commission until you shall receive advice from the Continental Congress, and we shall be able to prevail with Heath to make a concession honorable to himself and advantageous to the public. We humbly conceive the way would be open to do justice to Thomas. We have the honor to be your Excellency's most obedient humble servants, James Warren, Joseph Howley. Okay, here's a footnote, or an explanation, not a footnote. James Warren was president of the Massachusetts Provincial Congress, and Joseph Howley was vice president. Both men were radical patriots who had long been active in the political affairs of the colony and their respective localities. Warren, a merchant and gentleman farmer from Plymouth, represented his town in various legislative bodies from 1766 to 1778 and served on many local revolutionary committees. He was elected president of the Provincial Congress on 19th of June, 1775, and became Speaker of the new House of Representatives on 19th of July, 1775. His close friends John and Samuel Adams tried without success to have him appointed a Continental Brigadier General, but on 27th of July, 1775, Warren was made Continental Paymaster General, which office he held until the following April. Warren also served on the Navy Board of the Eastern Department from 1776 to 1781, and was a Major General of the Massachusetts Militia from 1776 to 1777. Howley, a lawyer from Northampton, was one of the leading political figures in Western Massachusetts, and like Warren, he represented his town in the colony's assemblies for many years. Howley served as a chaplain at the siege of Louisburg in 1745, and as Major of Hampshire County during the French and Indian War. He was involved in raising and supplying troops. In 1774, Howley was elected to the 1st Continental Congress, but he declined to attend, probably because of poor health. A mental breakdown in the fall of 1776 forced him to retire permanently from all public affairs. Footnote number 1. The arrangement of the 8 Brigadier Generals appointed by the Continental Congress on 22nd of June occasioned great consternation in Massachusetts. John Thomas of Kingston, a much respected officer who had commanded a provincial regiment during the French and Indian War, was designated the 6th Brigadier, while William Heath of Roxbury, an inexperienced soldier whom Thomas outranked in the Massachusetts service, was named the 4th Brigadier. Both Thomas and Heath were appointed generals in the Massachusetts Army by the colony's Provincial Congress on the 8th of December, 1774. But when the siege of Boston began in April 1775, Thomas quickly emerged as a leading figure in the American Army, taking command of the camp at Roxbury. His merits in the military way have surprised us all, end quote, James Warren wrote of Thomas in a letter to John Adams on 12th of June, or on 27th of June. Quote, I can't describe to you the odds between the two camps. While one, Cambridge, has been spiritless, sluggish, confused, and dirty, the other, Roxbury, has been spirited, active, regular, and clean. He has appeared with the dignity and abilities of a general. End quote. Thomas was commissioned a lieutenant general by the Provincial Congress on 19th of May, and Heath was appointed to the lesser provincial rank of Major General on 21st of June. Unacquainted with any of the New England generals before his arrival at Cambridge, George Washington was cautious in forming his opinions of them. But he soon agreed that Thomas deserved better treatment than he had received from the Continental Congress. Quote, the general, James Warren, unquote, James Warren informed John Adams in a letter of 7th of July, 1775, quote, was very sorry and somewhat embarrassed with the neglect of Thomas, end quote. Fortunately, a solution to the problem seemed to be at hand. Seth Pomeroy of Northampton, a veteran of 2 colonial wars whom the Continental Congress appointed first brigadier general, was expected to decline his commission because of his advanced age. If he did, Thomas could be put in his place. Heath promptly agreed to this change, and George Washington delayed his reorganization of the army until Pomeroy made known his decision. No word, however, was forthcoming from Pomeroy, who had gone home to Northampton after the Battle of Bunker Hill. Unable to wait any longer, George Washington announced the new arrangement of the army on the 22nd of July, and Thomas indicated that he would quit the army rather than accept a position below Heath. George Washington wrote to Thomas on 23rd of July, urging him to remain until a verdict on his commission arrived from the Continental Congress. The delegates in Philadelphia, in fact, resolved on 19th of July to appoint Thomas first brigadier general, quote, in the room of General Seth Pomeroy, who never acted under the commission sent to him, end quote. Thomas's new commission reached Cambridge on 4th of August, and he accepted it. Okay, the final letter from 4th of July, 1775, from Thomas Jefferson to Francis Epps, Philadelphia, 4th of July, 1775. Dear Sir, since my last, nothing new has happened. Our accounts of the Battle of Charlestown have become clear, and greatly to our satisfaction. Contrary to what usually happens, the first accounts were below truth. It is now certain that the regulars have had between 1,200 and 1,400 killed and wounded in that engagement, and that of these 500 are killed. Major Pitcairn is among the slain, at which everybody rejoices, as he was the commanding officer at Lexington, was the first who fired his own piece there and gave the command to fire. On our part, were killed between 60 and 70, and about 150 wounded. Among those killed was a Dr. Warren, a man who seems to have been immensely valued in the North. The New Englanders were fitting out light vessels of war by which it is hoped we shall not only clear the seas and bays here of everything below the size of a ship of war, but that they will visit the coasts of Europe and distress the British trade in every part of the world. Oh, wow. The adventurous genius and intrepidity of these people is amazing. They are now intent on burning Boston as a hive which gives cover to regulars, and none are more bent on it than the very people who come out of it, and whose whole prosperity lies there. This, however, if done at all, is thought better to defer till the cold season is coming on, as it would then lay them under irremediable distress. Powder now seems to be our only difficulty, and toward getting plenty of that nothing is wanting but saltpeter. If we can weather out this campaign, I hope that we shall be able to have a plenty made for another. Nothing is requisite but to set about it, as every colony has materials, but more especially Virginia and Maryland. My compliments most affectionately to Mrs. Epps. Mr. and Mrs. Skipwith, I expect, have left you. Adieu, Thomas Jefferson. Manuscript not located. Text from Randall, Life 3rd, 568, where the letter was printed from a copy furnished by Sis Epps of Tallahassee, Florida, grandson of Thomas Jefferson, addressed Francis Epps, Fran Esquire, in Charles City, County, Virginia. Okay, folks, if you like those letters from 4th of July, 1775, please give a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.